Those chilly crickets are warming up just a little bit. Is it springtime or what? I think it's officially springtime. I don't care where you are. We've just declared it behind the woodshed. All the lawnmowers fired up. They're ready to go. Overnight temperatures are going to be heating up, and I hope the crickets have something else better to do. Really. And it's really that easy. Every one of us decide to do something, to right a wrong that we just can't stand anymore, and just do it. And like I tell you, I've been doing this for a long time. It's been a long road. We're still slogging it out, but in fact, we talk about the incremental change that came upon us. We're making the incremental comeback, and that's the hard thing for most people to recognize, to see, to set up for. And I just ask you to put the time you can in for as long as you can, and understand it's an ongoing condition. These people that are evading our way of life, and the thoughts are in the seats of decision. We kind of fell asleep at the switch, and it's time we have to bring it back. And really, do we have to bring it back? Well, I guess we don't. We could sit and allow them to run our lives, and then we'll have, like I tell you, a few of us will be gone here in a couple decades, if that much. And that's if we're blessed to go that far. And the little ones will be having to pick up where we left off. So it's kind of our game right now. For some of us, it's in the last running, and I guess that's all we have to do at some point. I don't know any of the dreams that I had did work out to where they are today. I'm in the place I am. I find for some reason I'm finding that I need to address some things that I didn't know was going on. So I'm asking those of you that continue to listen and do what you can, and maybe you do continue to listen because we are doing what we can. And I'm not saying that all of us are not doing anything, but again, the crickets is the mass response to what really needs to be a mass response in the opposite, not being, being disturbed enough to not be able to be the sound of the cricket. We need to be engaged at all levels and at everywhere. And there's enough of us, I think, that we can do that. So before we get into today's notice from the news, the highlights, I want to point on something here for really quickly. I'm not going to get too deep into more of it. That if you're knowing about the mining law, or you're interested in it, or property rights, or land use, or public lands, I need to warn you really just on a very short thing. I'm still in the middle of doing some heavy research into a problem that just sprung up. It's happened that there's a new supposed advisory council that's making its way through the mining community and the forums and the public lands people, and it's called the Mining and Mineral Advisory Council, MMAC. I will have to tell you right off the bat, I've been doing quite a few days of research here on it. Not on it, but on what really they're not telling us about this. It's purporting to be the end-all, be-all, to unify, modernize, and unify the voice of all the public lands people. And these words just get us under one voice. And the one voice is a capitalized term, one capital O and capital V. So all these things, if we didn't pay attention before, and if you've been behind the woodshed, to start paying attention. These call my attention to a problem. And why is it a problem? Well, because my experience, first my knowledge to know that there was something amiss and figuring out some of that, and then my experience dealing with how this thing amiss was eventuating itself in excrementing itself into the world. It's no different than any other creature. It has things about it that you can identify. Well, this MMAC has all those things that are really serious to caught my attention. At first, in the first 12 hours after I'd heard about it, I disregarded it. I said, well, this is not really anything. I already knew by reading some of it that what the words were. It said these people are not, whatever these people think they're doing, it shouldn't affect us. Well, people are funny creatures at some level about being so accepting, especially when you got the thumb screws on. You just want the pressure of the thumb screws off, and you can't do it yourself, so you'll just look for anybody to take those thumb screws off. And we're finding typically the one that wants to take the thumb screws off is the one that wants to put a noose around your neck. So you got to be careful on how you respond to a lot of this. So a lot of people want the pressure off. They just want to go and do their thing. For miners, it's production. For timber, it's production. The land use is all production. So we're kind of oriented to production. We just want to go to work and be left alone to go to work. And when you're not allowed to do that, you want to look for any way just to go do that and not worry that someone else is maybe taking care of it for you. Well, this MMAC and what they're proposing, I'll tell you, is probably one of the biggest threats I've seen, even though I disregarded it early. In actuality, it shouldn't be doing anything. The problem is people are agreeing to it. People don't understand what this MMAC is about. It's, again, Mining and Mineral Advisory Council, and that name should tell you all you need to know. It's an advisory council. It's promoting itself as something much, much more. And so those of you that are into mining, that are miners underneath the 1872, which actually starts back in 1864, so understand your mining law. I will ask you at least right now to forestall any engagement with that before you research, and I would give you a direction to start. Be careful of their nice, flowery, warm, kumbaya words. Go and look at what they're doing, and what they're doing you may want to go to find under the FACA Act. It's the Federal Advisory Council Act. There's an actual act for all this stuff. It's the opposite part of what we do for coordination. I hadn't ever really studied that part because we don't do that administrative side. But this ends up being an administrative bureaucracy that they're asking you to give your property over into so that they can put their one voice into the mix of 14 other voices that are required under that act, or as the coordination cooperating agencies are required to do, to diminish the voice of everybody else. When you go look at the FACA and you understand, and then go look around to find out what a cooperating agency is and what collaboration is, you'll find out that really all you need to know if you have a property concern and you want to keep control. What this does is it essentially gets you into and gives over to the Secretary of Interior or other land management policy agencies. It gives over the authority into the discretion of that agency. This is exactly what we tell the counties don't do. We tell them, because they're governments, to engage on coordination, because then you assert your right to your duty, essentially, as a county. For you property owners, or your people with the right to travel the highways and all this thing, you give over your voice to an administrative bureaucracy that's pretending to be a federal agency in the future through a new agency, and they're going to be federally funded. You've just given over all your say and the discretion of it over to a federal bureaucracy. So that's a short part of that. If you will, please look at this very carefully. Don't let the conflagration, the wildfire that's been set alight on this. This is a very slick presentation. If you don't know the words they're using and you don't understand how treacherous these people can work, I'm not saying that everybody in MMAC even understands this. I'm saying that they could be being duped, and they're being cleverly duped, unless there are a couple of the people in there that really do know and are doing the duping. So we're dupable. You have to understand that. If you don't understand that, go read the Protocols of the Elders of Zion. You'll understand how dupable you are. And I'm just pointing out to you where you need to go. If you couldn't figure it out, you won't see them talking about any of this. I had to figure out what was the end result of what they were doing, and then conform that to laws and rules I'd seen before, and it guided me into where I didn't even know about the FACA. When I saw it, it defines what they're doing perfectly. And if they don't know they're doing that, well, that's what they're doing. You just need to know that. And I'm going to ask you all, property owners, public land accessors, and whatever, hikers, hunters, fishermen, whatever, production people, be very cautious on accepting the whirlwind that's being developed around this real slick promotion, trying to get you to give your voice over to a diminished one voice. So. And I'll just tell you ahead of time, I'm looking right now to do the research. I'm in collaboration for ourselves. If we want to talk about collaboration, we got to work ourselves, these things amongst ourselves. So we can do that. And that's what the whole point is. If you're in collaboration, you're within one entity. You don't have your rights anymore. You're working with other people with that. You're working to advance those things. So, anyway, we are working right now in Jefferson Mining District. Will more than likely be presenting in the near future, as soon as we get together, at least a a statement about that at least. And in addressing this situation, they purport to be able to make administrative mining districts nationwide. So this is it wouldn't affect the Jefferson mining district because they can't. No one mining district can overcome another actually, but there's no provision for administrative mining districts. Certainly not under one voice. That's no mining district at all, because a mining district is a government. It has its own independent sovereignty, if I can put it that way. It's got its own property owners within that government which protect itself from trespass, essentially. So under cooperation, collaboration, partnership, teamworking with and under the secretaries of the agencies, you lose all your voice and you become just an advisor, just like their name says. It's an advisory council. It's not a grantee, and it's not a government. And so there's also a fundamental problem when you get in and look at this. Without being a government, they actually can't be a cooperating agency, and they can only be an advisor, as they call themselves a stakeholder. Now, stakeholders can interfere terribly, adversely to property owners and grantees and appropriators. And they do all the time, and this is one of our big problems, identifying it. But this is a big. They want to turn you into a stakeholder if you're a property owner. You don't want to do that. I just tell you, and I'll put my opinion on that as I look at this. Why would you want to do that? Think about that. Now, the technical side is you can't, but they'll get your consent. What they do is they don't get your consent that you have an active voice. You just give up because you think you gave it over. So this is us doing it to us. I want to warn us on that. I was completely off of the track I was going to start on, but not unimportant here. This is how they kill us. This is how they take us down. We don't really understand what we're up against, and I've got an insight about that. I wanted you all to know about it, and I'm talking to you a little bit more longer than I was thinking I would here in first few minutes, because you can apply this threat. Folks, this is what the Jefferson Mining District sued to stop, was this very method that they used to literally destroy your governments with. This is how they're doing it. It's really fascinating to be at the core insight of a lot of this. So this is consistent with our reporting behind the Woodshed, but it's also very private to us in the property rights sector and the public land use. This is going to adversely affect lots of people. So enough said. Just know that you need MMAC. You need to really, I would ask you to forestall any consideration about it until you really sit down and do the research about what the function of that, what it actually does. And then maybe, contact a couple people, contact some people. You can contact me, markonthebeast@yahoo.com. You kind of know where I'm going to go with that, but I don't talk about an opinion. I will direct you to things that you will be able to read for yourself. I'd rather have you be knowledgeable and make your own decisions than me know it all the time or thinking I'm knowing it all. You'll know it too. Again, and how do I do that? It's the way you do it. Read the black and white. I was not shocked, but I'm always surprised that there's always stuff in the law that's there for us to use, or being abused against us. And when we read the black and white, how easily and quickly we can straighten it up by just going there. And anyway, that's enough. There's a lot to say on this. I could go on and on and on. I did at the SWOMA meeting, but that's because we're a bunch of miners there in all different capacities that are going to be adversely affected against this very serious threat. Not to you, but because what you're going to give up when you think they're doing something that they promoted that they actually cannot, that the law will not allow them to do that, but the agency will agree with it because they've got you controlled now. They got your voice. They took your voice and stuck it under one voice. Think about that. So moving on now to the just interesting little things that maybe didn't, again, I don't know too much about a lot of the news. I'm really overwhelmed with what we're doing and focusing on what we're doing. And I don't get out much, and I don't listen to too many people for news, so I don't really know that there wasn't much new noise about this. But I want you all to know, because I think it's very important. As we watched, we found out that the commodity markets and the instrument markets are fixed. They're simply fixed. We were told that a long time ago. You could hear William Roberts on his broadcast, Become Vocal Local. He'd do the London Gold Fix every day. Well, all the days of the week. The London Gold Fix. And no, we'd kind of listened to that, and okay, it's a term to us. But we found out it was actually the fix is in with the London Gold Fix. Well, we find out as we move and understand more, the entirety of the commodities market and Wall Street and these derivatives is all fixed. It's all a fabricated illusion. So when I hear things like this, and you find out that the players that are too big to fail and too big to jail and all this are involved, you really should pay attention. We need to see this notice. This is news. It's notice to us. What's coming down the pike, and we need to be able to, I believe we have this as advance notice so they don't take it on themselves like they didn't tell you when they destroy your life. They say, well, we told you this. They can sit back and say, well, but we told you. You just didn't pay attention. I'm asking us to learn those principles to apply. That's why we come behind the woodshed and learn about all that. HSBC has just shocked clients by announcing closure of all London gold vaults. Think about this, folks. They were probably empty anyway, but now apparently they have to do some kind of a disclosure. For those of you that are been watching gold being beat down, remember that price got beat down. It's fixed. So the governments came in, and I think last week, and beat it down severely. They try to get you destabilized in understanding it. Understand it also. The future appears to be there's going to be some gold currency coming from somewhere, but we also know that gold currency is, again, being fixed, is also controllable. You have to be careful on what you're looking at. But those of you that are into gold, consider that the other big news in this week, HSBC giving only 2 months notice to clients that they are closing down all 7 of their London gold vaults. This is an unprecedented move. Now, when I see these things unprecedented, like experts say, and it's like a big deal that it was unprecedented that they didn't understand. You pay attention. I don't know what this. See, to me, it doesn't mean anything. I got nothing here behind the woodshed. I got very little. Like I said, if it all goes in a big, it's going to be probably better that it all goes in a big flash for me than it drags out, because there's not much here. We'll do what we can. We prepared as best we can. But any long-term draw out and destruction of your economy is going to be very difficult for anybody to survive. So for those of you who can't, and those of you who are in it, understand it's an unprecedented move to close these gold vaults. These are the people that are wrapped up in all the actual finagling of your financial system. This is what will impinge upon itself no matter what paper currency that you eventually have. I'm not the mind and the brain to figure out how that all works. I just know if you come into a time when you need substance for substance and you don't have something that someone else wants to trade for what you need, you will not be getting what you thought you needed from somebody. So you got to find, when things start to turn and the inflation starts to steal the taxation by inflation starts to steal what you have because you keep it in paper. You need to understand this dynamic so you don't get caught. You can protect yourself. You can be the few that extend yourself out when they start to turn this thing down. Let's say we get a big inflation. There's too many dynamics that I can't see how this is not going to happen. The big inflation on your paper money. If you start going, as I say, to silver coin, at least you're going to be caught between the fixing of all the commodity prices, which really don't change that much. They can only do so much with that. So this is an unprecedented move. Why do you think this is? It is because transparency is coming. Well, I don't believe that. The transparency is being ripped away. It's been transparent that they've been destroying your lives through these invisible taxations and controls and fixations on your economic way of life. This is why you need to figure out ways to be different from that. That's what I've been asking behind the woodshed to everyone think about how to go about doing it. Why? Bitcoin is an interesting alternative that you can use, but again, it's got its major problems in all this, again, digital currency. That's another way to get you into strictly electronic money and get away from all this stuff, which is where they want to push us, as we see the Silent Weapons for Quiet Wars talking about. They get you into that digital realm. It's not your realm. It's not hand-to-hand contracts and agreements between people. And then they can cut that off, condition it, control it, tax it, steal it, like they do in the banks. Now, you're not even your safety deposit boxes are valuable anymore. They just come in and steal their stuff. It's their stuff, actually, when you look at it, the way they have it worked out. So, the comment was saying, I also suspect, given the lack of warning and lack of press release, that the majority of these clients will be unable to make other vault arrangements in time. HSBC will no doubt make it easy for their clients to sell the bullion back to HSBC, on and on. I just wanted you to know this is a serious disclosure, I would say. Unprecedented, as they also say. I know with those of us that don't have gold, it doesn't matter. Like I said, I don't have anything in the gold vault to worry about, but it's indicative of a direction that things are happening here that you don't want to get caught behind, I don't think. Another disclosure they're making to us, a vaccine, not Ebola, made Doc sick, study finds, and we reported behind the woodshed on this one, where just 12 hours after he got experimental Ebola vaccine and just 2 days after he stuck himself with a needle while carrying an Ebola patient in September, Dr. Louis Rubinson started getting sick. Now, I thought this guy actually injected himself. This is just a stick, a jab, just a jab from a vaccine. Think about this, how little this was. This wasn't a full vaccine. This was just the jab from a needle. Now, this story from mainstream media, NBC News, it actually goes on to try and promote the need for vaccines, but I wanted you to kind of pay attention to some of the internals of what goes on here and how they mess around with this information. They try to, and they tell you, again, they give you notice, this is pretty serious stuff on the vaccine side, but it wasn't Ebola. Even though he got jabbed with it by accident. He's a doctor. He accidentally gets infected. Just by the jab in the tip of his finger, he goes through a disaster scenario for his life, and he's into this idea, which shows you also in his response how inculcated to respond in one place and only look at one way of thinking he is. But by then, Robinson, after the jab, was aboard, Rubinson was aboard a jet being evacuated from Sierra Leone to the United States. He wasn't sure if he'd been infected with Ebola or if the vaccine was causing the reaction. This is an interesting disclosure now by the mainstream media that the vaccines can cause a reaction. So I'm asking all y'all, and I know we're coming into spring season, but we get to spring flu and spring fever. You got to be inoculated from spring fever, I think, folks. Be careful. But here it comes. That we got to be careful. The vaccine itself is now, they're telling us, is a reaction. So those of you that get them, or get them for your little ones, consider well what we're saying here, what they're admitting to this. Now, again, behind the woodshed, to be clear, I am not completely against the vaccine idea. It's not proven actually one way or the other. What I don't really like at all is the amount. As we found, there are studies that say the amount and so many are really the main problem, and so soon. And that we really have something to decide here beyond, it kind of goes beyond the mandatory condition that's being foisted on us, or it's actually being tested how you're going to respond. So your silence is going to be acceptance again. But here we have an Ebola vaccine being the actual one, the study, and they were wondering whether or not there was the vaccine, not the Ebola itself, for as bad as we heard Ebola. He was en route to a strict isolation in the National Institute of Health outside of Washington, D.C. Months later, it's fairly clear the vaccine caused the reaction. He has no trace of Ebola infection. No trace of Ebola infection, even though he was jabbed with this stuff, and it was alive. It wasn't dead. It was alive. So this is showing us hype in the system, and this is okay. You can say, okay, yeah, we know that. No, well, I'm telling you, this is confirmation that you need to put together for yourself when the government tries to make a cause to make anything mandatory. You're going to have to defend yourself. Forget about the mass coming against you. You're going to have some official leading the tip of that with the mass of misperception all over it, that you're going to have a discussion in your mind about how you can state that they have not done what they needed to do before they have the right to come at you. Like I said, there's a test now, a study now that says that the vaccinated ones are the ones that are spreading that disease that they're trying to get rid of. So this is, if you don't have this in your hand, in your mind, in your pocket, or somewhere tangible, accessible immediately, or at least to be able to put in a letter in response, an administrative side, you're going to be imposed. And I think, faced with a complete criminality, you're going to be stuck. But at least you'll have something to say. And I've been finding out over the last, 10 years now, just short of 10 years, when we finally started applying a lot of this knowledge against impositions, administrative impositions, they really can't get after you so easy. It makes it very, very, very difficult. So months later, it was fairly clear the vaccine caused the reaction. He has no trace of Ebola. What's not entirely clear is whether the vaccine stopped the virus from taking hold or whether he was never infected in the first place. Now, this is the first part where the story starts to try and turn the issue as to whether or not they're valid at all. However, right here, they'll give a disclosure before they go on to we need vaccines, which is really the ultimate discussion that they want to put out. But he says, my gut leads me to believe he was never exposed. He could never prove it. Thomas Geispert, an Ebola vaccine expert at the University of Texas Medical Branch, Galveston, told NBC News on this report, looking at it as a court case, there's no evidence that he was actually exposed to Ebola, despite the jab. This is important information to understand that he got jabbed, and because remember, they were hyping that if this Ebola looks at you anywhere, you were going to get it. And so this is to use this to get real, tone it down, don't go let your mind and their emotional, their need to bend your emotions, get the better of you here. There's a big disclosure in this little story before they get onto their propaganda, which is, you need vaccines. Rubinson wrote about his experience in an essay published in the American Journal of Tropical Medicine and Hygiene. Quote, while providing clinical care in a confirmed ward of Ebola treatment unit of the Kenema Government Hospital in Kenema, Sierra Leone, I accidentally stuck an 18-gauge hollow bore needle deep into my left thumb, he writes. So they had to actually say it's a confirmed ward. He has to push that because there must be unconfirmed wards. In other words, that's the hype wards that were out there hitting the news. He goes on to say, I could immediately feel some blood oozing under my glove, and I squeezed the area of penetration to try to promote additional bleeding. It's important. So now if you get stuck, make more bleeding, right? That's what we used to do when we were young. You get stuck with something, try to make it bleed. Flush it out, we were told. I mean, maybe not to the point you're bleeding to death. I mean, you get a carotid artery cut, you don't want to kind of let it bleed, do you? I mean, come on now. So, at any rate, let it bleed, folks. Get it out of there. Especially those rusty nails we used to run over. Let it bleed. So, that's what he does. Now, even letting it bleed, he didn't get Ebola, but he gets a reaction to the vaccine. How nasty are these things, folks? So, at any rate, and I squeeze the area of penetration to promote the bleeding. I rinse the outside of the glove with the only available 5% bleach. 0.5% bleach. So, here we have it. This is what he's doing as a response. Apparently that killed any Ebola that might have been there, even the one that might have been in his finger. It's a classic needle stick accident, he's saying. Doctors, nurses, and technicians catch a range of horrible diseases this way, from HIV to Ebola, which, remember, there's no actual test. These tests are clinical observations of your reaction that can be seen. And this is what kind of starts to come up to show this next statement coming in about what he felt after he got jabbed. It ties into this idea that a doctor can be misperceiving what's going on and say you have something when there's no actual proof of it. And so you have to understand these kinds of things. It's as if you're walking through a court of law all the time, and you have to be the defense attorney objecting to every potential evidence as being hearsay until actual evidence is shown in every discussion. So this certainly isn't something they taught us. This is not a principle they taught us in school. You only learn it behind a woodshed. It's a whole different mentality in our heads that we are never ever been told. And it's a lot of work actually, until we learn how. And then it's just a way you communicate. And I can suggest that happened after the meeting here, the mining association, not the district meeting, but the mining association meeting. I had a miner come with a problem, and it's really having a dialogue in your head to then present to someone who proposes themselves as an authority to say, to direct you to do anything. Once you get the formulation in your head, it's not really that much work, and it can save you a ton of trouble. So I bring these things up as points and important things so that you have them, and you make your list of these things, and you put them in your mind, you think about it. Well, when someone approaches me on these concepts, well, that Ebola story said that they did this, this, and this, and this, and those weren't actually proven. When some other guy comes along, or woman comes along with some authority and asks me on something else, those subject matter area questions I'm going to pose to them. So this is how you translate what I say here behind the woodshed on particular things to things in general. And I really just kind of do this on all of it. It's really that simple in one regard, although it's not so simple when you're faced with the threat. I mean, that becomes a shaky knees thing. That becomes your life is on the line because someone decided that they have some authority, and that's just again a color of authority. That's not even proven. So that's the first thing you challenge. You challenge that it's only color of authority and not actual. And you should be able to figure that out real quick because it's you have a right to. And they're a limited form government authority to the extent that it is that they can get away with pushing, and yours comes before your rights come before that. Whether they want to agree to that or not, that's what you have to hold. So if a needle has even a tiny bit of infected blood on it, it mainstreams a virus into the bloodstream, is what they're saying on the needle stick. Well, apparently not, huh? We don't have a proof of that. So this is where you start seeing the misinterpretation by these doctors. This is like scientists to me. This is like anybody, experts. It's like when you start to look at physics. They don't have an answer because nobody knows, folks. I mean, this is BBC had that report we reported. Science doesn't know anything. As I told you, it's scienceology. It's what we think. It's the study, the study of what we think we know. And that's passed off as reality and fact. And everybody says, oh, okay. And I'm learning that's really hurting us, if not killing us. It's killing us, too, actually, in this regard. Robinson had two choices: an experimental drug made by Canada company Tecmera, and we read about that and all that government money what was put behind that one, or an experimental Ebola vaccine that had not at that time ever been tested in humans. Robinson chose the vaccine. How bad is that chemical drug, folks? You're hearing the truth right in this story, even though you're hearing its propaganda at the end of it. He was put aboard a specially equipped jet on the long flight to Maryland and vaccinated. The patient developed malaise, nausea, and fever 12 hours after the vaccination while on the transport jet. Dr. Mark Mulligan of Emory University and colleague wrote in a study published in the Journal of American Medical Association Thursday that they could have been symptoms of Ebola or from the vaccine, which is made using a live virus called vesicular stomatitis virus, VSV, genetically engineered to carry GMO, folks, to carry a small non-infectious piece of Ebola virus and human fetal tissue and all the other adjuvants that cause your system to respond to these foreign bodies being injected directly into your system and not coming through any barrier, the natural barrier of your body. By design, the vaccine causes a mild infection that activates an immune system and helps to recognize Ebola. That's the theory. On day 2, the fever declined. However, severe symptoms continued with mild nausea and arthralgia. That's joint pain. Now think about this in the context of the papillomavirus in the girls. And understand this is an older guy. And what a younger woman or a younger son or daughter might be going through with their immune systems not quite ready for this. So pay attention on how the dynamic that they're explaining here. That this guy still got all this, just like they do. And you have your son and daughter complain, and the doctors will tell you, oh, that's nothing. That's nothing. It doesn't exist. It's in your head. On days 3 to 5, the patient experienced resolution of symptoms and laboratory abnormalities. Wow, folks. This is stuff they didn't even understand. And I want to, so I can go through reading. I don't want to read so much. I wanted to actually pull up. Maybe I'll do it instead of, I don't see where I found it here. I didn't highlight it. But the doctor himself explains that he was under the impression that fearful of the reaction that he got, but thankful that he had the vaccine. But his response to that was an expectation built into him, not that he knew. And this statement that he makes shows he doesn't know. And yet, as a doctor, he's telling people things that they believe he knows, which I found really telling about what a doctor, well, if you can call these people doctors this way, I guess they're doctors, just doctoring is dabbling in things, that he is showing you a fear set and responding in the way he's been told instead of from a position of knowledge. And this is a very important, I think, to realize about what's happening. It's as if they say, do what I say, not as I do or know. And this is a very serious defect in this position that comes out in this story. Anyway, I'll give you the link, post-production broadcast, blogcaster, for the content. If you could get over to Real Liberty Media to get it, the blogcaster has all the links. You can read it yourself. As I'm reading, I just realize I don't want to read. It's really these concepts that are here to see, and I just wanted to point some of them out. How we are being told the truth, but in the same time being forced into acting under the lie. That's the transparency part. The transparency is they tell you enough truth, and they talk to you truthfully, but they don't call it into your attention. They require that you do that. That means you have to be really clear of mind and interpretation. And to me, every word they say seems to be something I need to challenge. Actually, firstly, it's really their authority to say so. And a license, remember, and it's pretty simple for me in the way I kind of have reduced this down to make it easy workload for me. Anytime someone has a license, that's permission to do an illegal act. And when you walk around in your mind with that definition, it's real easy to start challenging people who produce some license. That includes the implied license of government authority, some license to do something. Notwithstanding, I may not be doing a commercial act. Well, the taking of the vaccine is a commercial act. I don't know if you know that, but that's the other thing that they don't tell you about. The fact is that they have a limited authority that you have to question up front, and if you don't, you succumb. And that's the silent part. That's the crickets. That's why crickets is so dangerous. It's not just that there's a whole bunch of them. It's any one of us. Any one of us can go down for a lack of knowledge. And moving on, someone who may be going down, but really I'm not going to go through more of the story. I could care less about some of this, but it shows something. It gives us an indication. Back to our lawsuit very quickly here. Senator Bob Menendez, I am not going anywhere. So he says. And what's intriguing about this for me is that the Justice Department is preparing to bring criminal corruption charges against Senator Robert Menendez of New Jersey, Democrat, alleging he used his Senate office to push the business interests of Democratic donor and friend in exchange of gifts. Now, you notice a lot of this stuff for corruption is only around gifts and donations like bribes. I find it fascinating. And this is going to be a big test in my mind as we move our lawsuit along, where we identify people going into office that do this, but not so much for the point of the bribe, for the point of utilizing an office lawfully gained for a criminal purpose. And what we found and what was admitted to literally being the destruction of the Republican form of representative government in one of the aspects, if not a complete aspect. That I wanted to point this out, that here's evidence for those of us that are paying attention. Attorney General Eric Holder is willing to go after this guy for bribes, and I'm going to be interested to hear that attorney. Remember, we sued the bar, so he's going to be out of it as soon as we go approach it. Once we finalize our paperwork on the condition that the suit, the judgment in law that's gotten from their lack of answer, whether or not they will extend corruption to the destruction of your governments. See, what's interesting when you look at the statutes is really, except for treason and sedition, and things, just a few of those like that, it's really only tied, the law is only tied to corrupting through money, through bribes or embezzlements or things. This is what they usually focus on, when in fact, you should notice that it's really more of damaging to corrupt not the money system that they've now made so important, but your system of government that was supposed to protect you. That when it doesn't, you see how quickly things have been rolling downhill into the stinking abyss. Anyway, this story shows us that the FBI, the DOJ, all these people are going after this corruption. I'm going to be really interested to see if they go after the one that we've gotten admission for. for all the players in a complete state. And I want to say that, so I want you to know that this is the day that we say that, and we say, okay, well, we're going to see whether or not any other part, how balanced, how equal is this justice that they think that they're wielding. Why do I want that pointed out? Because I want people to start being able to identify certain points in time when we knew and we could prove that there was something amiss, and I want us, because the responsibility is always on us, to alter or abolish that government that has established itself inside the lawful government that was only created. It's limited to protecting us, that no longer does so. And I think if we don't finally set down the foundation for that, we will always be adrift. We have to set the foundation for that harm. And I've been doing it week after week, time after time, I hope that we'll at least mentally get that harm nailed down so it stops being the endless story. Why I stopped doing the news, and I'm back to it again, doing this news, but I'm trying to show you even more pointedly, more focused on the fact that this news and notice is actionable. And that is us. We have to now take it from there. That these people are going after this New Jersey. I don't have a clue about any of this stuff. That they're willing to think that influencing donors and bribes and all that is okay to go after New Jersey. I want to know why they didn't stop the state of Oregon. I want to know why they're not stopping the same crime for a different agenda, literally a religion. Admitted, folks. This is not hyperbole. This is not just a fantasy. They've admitted to the wrong. In Washington, now connected through unconstitutional, as we heard in Missouri, unconstitutional interstate compacts, international compacts. In California, it's the same. In fact, it's the same that I've opened up the broadcast talking about the danger of MMAC. It's the same method they're using. We sued a year ago to stop and join this thing, and this is a big machine. We have to go still do some things to stop it. It's a big machine. It has a lot of momentum. But they're willing to come after this guy for this petty, what I consider petty bribery, and I'd want to know now if they're going to go after the one we exposed. It's now just puking itself out all over the West Coast between California, Oregon, Washington, and British Columbia. And when I say that, folks, to my listeners in the West Coast, you need to step up. You need to start embracing the fact you are not helpless, and you don't have no evidence. You have the evidence. It's in the news of all the wrongdoing that forms other more deep violations. As I said on the broadcast when we did, my colleague and co-plaintiff in our lawsuit, Ron Gibson, we talked on a broadcast. I said if the FBI and the Oregon State Police do not go after and investigate and collect up, because they have an admission in our lawsuit of their wrongdoing in this very capacity where they take donations even from the EPA, it becomes that incestuous that they take these funds to do a certain thing which essentially destroys your governments that were supposed to set up to protect you. And they do it by legal entities called the Bar Association, the political parties. That if they don't actually go after these people that were party to our suit, two of which ramrodded the new carbon tax through in Oregon to match up apparently with California. They were the same parties that were given notice 2 years ago they were felons, and they don't care. That if you on the West Coast at least don't take what we have done and don't take the news and combine it up and be a voice, you're being crickets. We have enough evidence now. It's really on us. You want to talk about talking Constitution? How about if you start doing Constitution? Stop complaining about it and start enforcing it. And I just, as I say that, apparently there's not a whole lot of people that actually want to do anything. Apparently, talking to people, the more refined that I do this behind the woodshed, and the smaller the listenership gets, the more I appreciate y'all. I don't mean that I didn't appreciate you before, but I mean to stick out what I say to try and give you the tools. I'm hoping that you're actually building in you the power to go out and do that, or are doing that. That the more and more people that don't continue to hang on, to continue getting the tools, and don't respond to me, and don't explain how I went off the rail, and how I don't know what I'm talking about, or whatever, and the refinement that's going on right now, that is just amazing to me, shows us really how much more work it is and how cherished anybody who steps up to work is. That I really do appreciate the people that continue to listen. And then the little word comes out here and there. I get my emails. You guys are doing stuff. I understand that. That's not who I'm talking about, and I think those of you that are doing stuff know that. That we have a lot of work to do, and there's only going to be a few of us. Everybody, most everybody is a talker. We'll make every excuse. The whole point here is that it's in the people to do. You can't make any excuse not to respond. And I'm trying to go here every week to show you the evidence is everywhere that we can take just about anybody down if we just assert ourselves. And for those of us that don't have a lot of time, as I say, just do what you can. Maybe incorporate some help to someone who is doing something. Find those people out. Do that. You have that voice. Don't be subsumed by one voice like MMAC wants to do. You have your voice. As I say, this is not rallying up under one voice of a riot out in the streets. This is each one of you having your voice. That's how this has to happen. And this has to happen if you ever had agreed that there was some kind of an organization where a government, the first in the history of the world, that instead of being what it has become, what we've let it become, it was supposed to protect us in what we were to do. If you want that life, you're going to have to fight for it. We were told that. We didn't I don't think we appreciated that. I'm still kind of appreciating that. I mean, and to do it in a way that's going to be a lot longer than what we see comes out of the barrel of a gun, the lead out of a barrel of a gun. I think this is one of our big lessons that we still had to quite learn yet. And I think, well, I have the awareness. I know a couple of you out there have the awareness that we can do this. We just have to assert it. We can be peaceful and still be forceful. And I think we have that example for those of us that have to utilize it. Whether or not I support the books that explain that idea. If it's just a myth, it's a good myth. I'm talking about Christ, Jesus Christ, come as a peaceful example. Came and told us that there's a natural law out there that we can't undo. We better always be we better comply with that natural law, whatever you want to call it, that bigger thing. You better just agree and humble yourself to that. And you better fight for that. You better example that consistency, that humility in every aspect of your life. And then I find out there's another one here late. I find out because I'm not that much studied in these things, and it comes along in different ways, but I try to pay attention. I'm also commanded not to fear. And I hope that one strikes you even more powerfully. We are not to fear. And really, how can you? What you see is an enemy. I don't know. Every time I've ever gotten involved with an altercation where I knew the other guy was wrong, or the other guy was a trespasser, I never feared. I just acted. I just responded. Now, whether or not that was the best and most prudent thing, that's always a decision after the fact, and whether or not you should have took another moment to think, I don't know. I don't think I've made too many major mistakes, although the few I made sometimes actually invoked that I needed to actually go to a much worse response in force to protect in self-defense. So we learn through these interactions that this one to me is pretty clear. We have we're in a war, there's no doubt. We're at Battlefield America, they declared it. They declared that those people that are doing it are not going to care about you, and there's no law that they're going to recognize. They went extrajudicial. The judicial we hear only goes after parts and pieces, and we have the ability and the power to pull all this together individually and go after the thing that irritates us the most about the wrong that looks like the greatest to us. That's on us. That's always been. If you look at your constitutions, it says the right of the people to alter or abolish their constitution is in the people. Who's going to do that, folks? Who are the people? For all of you all that talk about all this stuff and chat about it and hand it off to somebody else. This was us. I never truly appreciated what this means more than I do today. Whether or not I'm taking the proper avenue, that's up for discussion, I guess, at some level. That will be determined in the future, partly if whether or not people will embrace what we're doing. It's just almost like a continuous propaganda campaign to gain public opinion favor. Wow, how frail are we? And to see how easily duped we are, the technology against us. I was noticing somebody came through the WT forum with a project. They're using face recognition to change the face of a battered woman on a billboard. Think about that. As the machine sees faces looking at the billboard, it makes the battered woman appear less battered. How sick is that? How tied into are these people into our psyche? And yet they are. And we'll be looking at that billboard, and they'll take credit even if you haphazardly look up there. So what are they also doing? Well, I don't want to look at that billboard because I don't want to be one of those people that buys into the fact of their propaganda campaign. Well, now I'm being told, now I have to direct myself at what their instance is, aren't I? How fast they can get control of us and our actions. And that's just an ad campaign. I mean, what they actually do to us is pretty fascinating, more deeply. And then to have control of your little ones for inculcation systems in the called education system, that's the big one. Every day, that's the facial recognition system every day, controlling what you do and don't do, depending on how you respond. Pretty pathetic. Anyway, so we see now evidence the DOJ will go after certain things. And I'm going to ask you all to pay attention to see whether or not they go after the real crime, which is the destruction of the foundation of your government, which is really supposed to protect you. And we have no concept of that, folks. I can just tell you, when I talk about that, I realize that's probably flying over everybody's head. Everybody, not everybody, but again, I'm talking absolutes when I say every, but point is that we will take that and say, yeah, right, the government doesn't do anything. Well, that's because we've allowed it to go there. I'm asking us to step up, because if we want the government that we want, we have to alter or abolish the one that's not giving us what we need. Not what we want, but what we need. That's on us. It always has been, what I keep telling you about, even under occupied territories. All this stuff is consistent. I'm asking us to make that more consistent observation, consideration, and then action. Knowledge about it doesn't matter. See, and it doesn't matter whether or not the Constitution exists or not, whether it doesn't. Well, it does. It does to the extent that they even use it as a tool. I'm talking about where it imposes itself, that we, if we don't like it, as a people, again, not you, all of you, but by each one of you is the power that you change that because you have to. Why? Because it's destroying a need in the people. It's destroying the people. It's destroyed the structure that the people could use and rely on. I don't think that any of us listening to me, or maybe even many of us listening later on replay, in the future, I'm talking in the future, given some file somewhere in some computer someplace that keeps carrying this word, until we start acting, there's going to be people that don't even understand what I'm talking. I don't even understand what I'm talking about. I'm dealing in an unpeaceful condition, where the government doesn't protect our property. That's my whole life's existence when I am truthful about that. There was never a government that protected me. It was the promise to do that. And yet here we have the example to go get it, and we are told it's not on anybody else. Each one of us, if we want that future world, we are going to have to go after it and get it. Now, that requires some sort of planning. You have to have proper consideration. You have to have all the clear thought. You have critical thinking. You have to be contemplative about what the facts are and how to deal with it. Don't live in an unreality. Don't abandon that. Don't excuse it away to say, I don't have to do it. And like I say, the refinement of the listeners on the broadcast, really kind of interesting. There's not a lot of people that want to they don't want to do the hard work. The people really don't want to be the better future that they believe they can talk about and complain that they don't have. It was everybody that complains about it, they don't have it, and doesn't do anything about it, is their own self-inflicted wound. And a lot of people don't like to hear that, but that's what's going on. And whether or not we act properly, proper to the actual effectuation to the end, I don't know. Like I say, I'm doing what I do as it's come to me to do. And I've dedicated and been allowed to dedicate my life in the best place I can be. When I did that, it all started to fall into place, and I just hope it continues, that I have all this happening. Actually, it's not a question. It just seems to continue. And so I dedicate myself even more. And still, that we are making changes. It's just taking a long time. As I say, it's like taking a freighter and trying to turn it with an oar stuck in the back of it. It's going to take a while. Now, the more of us with oars stuck in behind that ship of state, getting it back on the course, and not so it doesn't go hit that proverbial iceberg, and we get it in the direction that we wanted, maybe one day we will be able to get ourselves in a truly peaceful condition. The tranquility. Think about how powerful these things are. And we've never lived in a peaceful and tranquil world. We talk about it. I'm asking us, listen, if some of us will never see it. I don't know. I don't really think I'm going to see it. But do you strive for that, or do you give excuses for not letting someone else drive us into destroying everything and everybody, all other and wars and other peoples, and for whatever? I don't know. I mean, I understand there's a big underlying principalities and powers plan going on that we're not really going to fully understand anyway. But we can decide not to contribute to any of it, as we see. And I want to remind y'all, because this was a very important story. I've reported a long time ago, kind of forget about this stuff. Getting people that set plans to do destruction, and that we have to be there to counter it. And that we're the accessories to all that crime if we don't. There's another proof, another truth, why we have to be responsive. U.S. and Israel attempting to establish feigned diplomatic row to justify unilateral Israel attack on Iran. Very serious dynamic going on. This is what we might explain. I think this is Tony Cartalucci explaining what happened and was planned in 2009. Why we see the United States maybe engaging with Iran to make a peace deal, and then now you hear Israel jumping up to say you can't let Iran do that. This sets up the scenario where Israel could go attack Iran, and the United States would not be blamed to help it, because it's saying, oh, well, I'm doing a deal with Iran for its nuclear power. It's not us. And the dynamic that is set up to allow an attack by Israel on another country to bring supremacy for Israel. Now, I'm on record about where Israel is, the state of Israel. It's no, to me, in law, and what we read, and I've proven behind the Woodshed and reports, it's no more valid than is Islamic State, actually. It's an imposition, and it's a wrongful imposition in a lot of different areas. And I guess I don't have the time to really research it out. There's people that talk about it better than I do. And I'm not talking about it in the judgmental way. I'm talking there's just foundational problems with a lot of this. That this is an interesting maneuver that's been planned a long time ago to justify, to give protection, if you will, to the United States. At the same time, the outcome that Israel and Britain and United States and NATO want with its outcome with Syria and Iran is to have this fake bickering between Obama and Netanyahu, who also may be on the ropes. He came and did his Congress show and dance, the extravaganza, Israeli extravaganza before Congress, and that may not have gone so well. This may be the last show, the last act for Netanyahu, given some interesting responses that have coming out of Israel itself, and the orthodoxy of the religion coming out in even stronger now. So there isn't so peaceful around what Israel's doing. It's not so peaceful what the Brookings Report Institute really detailed out what has to happen in order to take Persia, which is Iran. Remember, it's not Islam. It's Persian. Very ancient peoples. And in 2009, this was detailed out, and this is really going to plan. This little fracas between Obama and Netanyahu really is to plan. So I just want to remind you that. You'll get the link later, unless you've already typed in a search engine. You can find the story yourself. Think about that. I think Cartalucci did a good job in reminding us. I didn't really read. I'm not the geopolitical expert to know whether or not every detail is exactly fact. But it reminded me of the report I did do about that a long time ago, and it was only conjecture at the time. And so here he is reminding us. I think that's a valuable aid, a valuable gift in a way to remind us of what we've already been through, so that it doesn't get lost in the memory hole, so-called. U.S. Israel military advisors accused of aiding ISIL arrested in Iraq, to show you this continuing plan. This is a tool. And we have now, as time goes on, and Iraq has seemingly changed its tactic. It's decided its homeboys are going to step up and protect themselves, like it happens in Syria. The homeboys are stepping up, and all of a sudden there's different truths that pop out. The people themselves, I'm telling you folks, the homeboys and women. Look at the east of Ukraine. The homeboys stepped up, and the women, and defended their own land, notwithstanding the borders. And when that happened, a whole different dynamic enters in. And you know, it's in a way, you get the mama bear syndrome. You don't attack a mama in her home with her kid. You don't do that. Now, any mama bear can be overwhelmed, so that's not a guarantee. The point is, there's a whole dynamic that happens when your land is being stolen, and you know that. That when you see these people decide to get together, and this came out, very interesting dynamic, what's happened in Iraq. Very interesting from beyond the propaganda that we hear. And this is why I really do enjoy Twitter, in the point of finding people on the Twitter that are living there, that actually Twitter stuff out. And I'm just thankful for the people that made translation programs, that I don't have to be a linguist. And I can at least get the idea, even of a bad translation of what's going on, better than I can get out of mainstream media. That I have been finding that what happened in Iraq was people waiting around, and they started to get beat up. And they're religious nations, even and still. That there is an order. We're told there's a Shia-Sunni divide. Well, but there really isn't when you find out. The Shia religion part is actually the determiner of action. And the Shia religion finally had enough and said, listen, folks, if we don't defend ourselves, the military can't, we're going to be run down. We need to call to arms. And when the Shia, and I wish I knew better the terms, the Shia authority, whoever that man is, declared that, the Iraqis, the people, stood up. And they joined together. It didn't matter whether they were Shia, Sunni, Christian, or whatever. See, this is the interesting thing. If you listen to Syria, it's the same way. They don't make religious distinctions. When I found out that the Shia were actually the determiner of action of the people, and the Sunni stepped right in, I said, wow, that's a whole different thing than we're told in the West. That when the Shia said, hey, folks, we are the people, we need to stand up and protect ourselves, they did. And all of a sudden, they're defending themselves in places that they couldn't defend themselves before, and all of a sudden we're finding out about downed British airplanes and American helicopters that are supplying ISIS. Now, U.S. Israel military advisors accused of aiding ISIL arrested in Iraq. ISIL. They realize that they've got to make this Levant addition to it for trying to keep you confused. But American and Israel military advisors being found in Iraq by Iraqis attacking ISIS finally is exposing this facade about what is. And who's involved, and what's going on, and who's running it, and why it looks like nothing's going on. And when the people finally step up, folks, this is the mirror for the United States. When the people finally stand up, you're going to see a different truth. You better identify the truths I identify behind a woodshed for you to use as the very first steps that we all can step and see the even bigger truths. I'm just going to probably be shocked to see how bad it really was that we allowed it. We won't see those. They're transparent. You want to talk about transparency? They're transparent to us because we're not mobile and active. As soon as we do, we're going to see really what our lawsuit pulled out. Everyone, Agenda 21, Agenda blah, blah, Agenda 21, this is stealing, that's common court. Well, I said sue them. Sue who does it and sue the system that's allowing it. Don't yak about it, folks. And so we did. And guess what? It exposed it, folks, right to the heart. And just coincidentally, governor falls. Coincidentally, interstate compacts are declared completely unconstitutional. Coincidentally, FBI gets all involved and interested. Weren't interested before. This stuff's been going on for 20 years. But now we start seeing things going on. It takes us to start asserting ourselves where we can. I want to read that story. That's enough. You need to know that Iraq, the people of Iraq have stood up, and now they're actually fighting for their own land, defending their own land, folks. You got to defend your own land. When you become Battlefield America, we didn't go to arms. I went to crickets. This is just over and over the same story. Is a tool to take down and take Persia. Now, I don't know how much you feel about taking other people down. I don't like it. Not with it. When your whole basis was supposed to be peace and tranquility and don't have foreign entanglements, this has long and away been needed to be fixed by us, we the people. And it's still not. As even the Allies are finding out, desperate German government releases reality check of Russian allegations. Again, the West saying that Russia's doing anything bad over in Ukraine. Thanks to the abysmal reporting record during the Ukraine crisis, trust in Western media has reached an all-time low. I'm surprised it has a rating. The situation in Germany is a case in point. According to recent studies, 63% of Germans have little or no trust in Ukraine coverage of German mainstream media. Again, Twitter gives me the ability to go find people that are twittering out from the battlefield. Western reporters from the battlefield, there because they were appalled of the mainstream media, Western propaganda, wrong reporting. And they're there risking their lives to tell us what the truth is. At least give us the video, and I hope, and we hope that I have a translator for it on their statements, because I don't really understand the foreign language. As smart as as exceptional as we all Americans is, can't even understand another language. And for those of you that can, my hat's off to you. Well, I have had to try a couple, but it's not a habit to me. I'm still working back to try and understand that Russian alphabet again. I'm doing better and better every day, looking at their tweets. And Spanish and Italian, all that stuff they tried to give to us, and it was just no purpose for it. Now we find the purpose. So we have nice translators that we can go read about the truth that now is being found out by people like Germany, the Germans. 63% isn't even high enough, is my mind. The point is that this is now becoming an issue for Germany. Western governments and media are freaking out and wondering what to do. They could start probably covering and telling the truth. That would help. Fortunately, it's not too difficult to identify the problem. The people are being lied to and manipulated. No, not by Western media, but by Russian media. At least that's what the increasingly unpopular government officials, pundits, and journalists in the West would have you believe. Now, I'm not going to read more. The point is it's becoming an issue, this failure of Western media to tell the truth. And it's reaching the government of Germany, who was involved with that Minsk II agreement, and they were the only ones involved. They took a special and fast trip over to Russia in a very special place in order to make this thing start to happen over in the Ukraine. This is some serious dynamics going on. I keep telling you, you better pay attention to some of this. The buffoons in Washington are going to get us into a ton of trouble. And I don't know if it's ever going to hit our land, but with the way the armaments are coming and the technology I tell you periodically is happening, we're not in a world of guarantees. And I'll tell you, we don't have a very good track record, actually, of any victory. As they do, as the West does over there in the mirror, the West does in the Middle East or in Ukraine, and the people rise up, we see a totally different story than what we're being told, as it reflects us. What do you think you're being told here in the United States, folks? That those of us you listen behind the woodshed, or have now for years, and now have the eyes that you see. That I don't have to tell you this stuff. It may be why you go away at some level. You don't need to hear it from me all the time, and then I don't know what you're doing. I hope you do something. If you walk away from here, since you know it all, I hope you're doing something when you're not listening to me. That we have the evidence that the government, as I said before, not out of an idea, a terse statement, oh yeah, they're just lying to us, it's just propaganda. No, that's the evidence. You had better roll up your sleeves and get active. What they're doing in other countries, this country, the United States of America, is what they're doing and have done to you, and you're probably more locked down than you can imagine. And most of you know that if you listen behind the woodshed. You're a free mind. I'm not saying it because you came here and listened that I'm the only one. We are kindred minds, kindred spirits as well. We already knew this, but I guess I'm trying to point out all these things and say, here, this is how we see this. This is more. It's really bigger. The bigger it is, like they call us, the target-rich environment. It's easy for us to get lulled into inaction, though. It's easy to believe that because someone says you're free, that you are, at least enough. As I learned, you get thrown into jail, you're free to get up and go to the bed, to the bathroom, to the toilet, go to the washer, go to the window, look out the window, and then go back to your bed. You're free to do that. How small is your acceptability of freedom then, folks? I realized when I was wrongly, because I was doing the DHS, when I was, this is over, 12 years ago, 15 years ago, going to expose what you see child services doing now in the news and the trafficking and the abuse and everything that sits behind this warm and fuzzy family services, child services thing. It's the adulteration and it's the abuse. It's really the rights of child. It's the purpose of rights of child under the UN thing. When I was going to do my documentary, somebody found out and I got put in jail, literally, over a different issue. But that's, when I got out of when they finally had enough time to go find every bit of it, they then released me. And when I got out, my project was destroyed. There was no one slip of paper evidence of it. To tell you, I may have got away alive because I'm still alive to talk about it. Lots of people who do this, like the gentleman who finally got his documentary out, isn't alive today. That this has been a long-term problem. That we think that our system is making freedom. But when they stuck me into that prison, that jail for 3 or so weeks, and I was doing all that I could do to defend, they had a very tough time about it with me, that's for sure. But I wasn't there for that, and I didn't have an appreciation of what was going on at the time. Just that they weren't listening and nothing was working, showing me that we really don't have a justice system. If I ever thought, had even just a slim chance to believe so, that I realized that everybody lives in a jail. It just depends on how expensive, how limited the borders are for you. Now, you might think being able to go down to the grocery store and back is fine. But you're going to have a guard between you and your bedroom that day. But when you go out and go do that, you're not really free. You just think you are. And that's good enough. Well, we have to drop that bar. We have to drop the bar about what we think free is. And I realized pretty quickly that it was no different living in a pod in a jail as it was in real life, if you will, outside the pod. It was just a different matter of degree of the jailing. It was a different matter of constraint. In other words, if you're in the jail, and once you're in a jail, knowing that you're in a pod, you're in your cell in the pod, in your community, that when you burst out and you finally cause enough trouble, they'll stick you even in a tighter pod. I mean, it's even smaller. We have even less things. That I realized it was just a matter of degree, the type of prison that we lived in, thinking we're free. And then I ran across this. I want to read something. I'm going to read this one, like I do read the silent weapons. I think this is an interesting essay. It's an excerpt, actually, from a book. They thought they were free. The Germans, 1933 to 45. We kind of think, well, how can those people do that? We are those people, folks. Don't judge other people anymore. This is us. But then it was too late. They thought they were free is the title, but then it was too late. What no one seemed to notice, said a colleague of mine, a philologist, was that the ever-widening gap after 1933 between the government and the people, just think how very wide this gap was to begin with here in Germany. And it became always wider. It doesn't make people close to their government to be told that this is a people's government, a true democracy, or to be enrolled in the civilian defense, or even to vote. All this has little, really nothing to do with knowing one is governing. What happened here in the gradual habituation of the people, little by little, of being governed by surprise, the receiving of decisions deliberated in secret, to believing that the situation was so complicated that the government had to act on information which the people could not understand, or so dangerous that even the people could not understand, it could not be released because of national security. And their sense of identification with Hitler, their trust in him, made it easier to widen this gap and reassured those who would otherwise have worried about it. This separation of the government from the people to this widening of the gap took place so gradually and so insensibly, each step disguised, perhaps not even intentionally, as a temporary emergency measure or associated with true patriotic allegiance or with real social purposes, and all the crises and the reforms, real reforms too, so occupied the people that they did not see the slow motion underneath of the whole process of the government growing remoter and remoter. You will understand me when I say that the Middle Hayek German was my life. It was all I cared about. I was a scholar, a specialist. Then suddenly I was plunged into all the new activity as the university was drawn into the new situations, meeting, conferences, interviews, ceremonies, and above all, papers to be filled out, reports, bibliographies, lists, questionnaires. And on top of that were the demands in the community, the things in which one was expected to participate that had not been there or had not been important before. It was all rigmarole, of course, but it consumed all one's energy, coming on the top of the work one really wanted to do. You can see how easy it was then not to think about fundamental things. One had no time. Those, I said, are the words of my friend and baker. One had no time to think. There was so much going on. Your friend the baker was right, said my colleague. The dictatorship and the whole process of its coming, its being, was above all diverting. It provided an excuse not to think for people who did not want to think anyway. I do not speak of your little men, your baker, and so on. I speak of your colleagues and myself, learned men, mind you. Most of us did not want to think about fundamental things and never had. There was no need to. Nazism gave us some dreadful fundamental things and to think about. We were decent people and kept us too busy with continuous changes and crises, and so fascinated by the machinations of the national enemies without and within, that we had no time to think about these dreadful things that were growing little by little all around us. Unconsciously, I suppose, we were grateful. Who wants to think? To live in this process is absolutely not to be able to notice it. Please try to believe me. Unless one has a much greater degree of political awareness, acuity, than most of us had ever had occasion to develop. Each step was so small, so inconsequential, so well explained, or, on occasion, regretted, that unless one were detached from the whole process in the beginning, unless one understood that the whole thing was in principle what all these little measures that no patriotic German would resent must someday lead to, one no more saw it in developing from day to day than a farmer in his field sees the corn growing. One day it's over his head. How is this to be avoided among ordinary men, even highly educated men? Frankly, I don't know. I don't see how, even now. Many times since it's all happened, I have pondered a pair of great maxims. Principiis obsta and finem respice. Resist the beginnings and consider the end. But one must foresee the end in order to resist and even see the beginnings. One must foresee the end clearly and certainly, and how is this to be done by ordinary men or even by extraordinary men? Things might have, and everyone counts on that might. Your little men, your Nazi friends, were not against National Socialism in principle. Men like me who are the greater offenders, not because we knew better, That would be too much to say. But because we sensed better, Pastor Niemöller spoke for the thousands and thousands of men like me when he spoke too modestly of himself and said that when the Nazis attacked the communists, he was a little uneasy, but after all, he was not a communist, and so he did nothing. And then they attacked the socialists, and he was a little uneasier, but still, he was not a socialist, and he did nothing. And then the schools, and the press, and the Jews, and so on, and he was always uneasier, but still he did nothing. And then they attacked the church, and he was a churchman, and he did something, but then it was too late. Yes, I said. You see, my colleague went on, one doesn't see exactly where or how to move. Believe me, this is true. Each act, each occasion is worse than the last, but only a little worse. You wait for the next and the next. You wait for one great shocking occasion, thinking that the others, when such a shock comes, will join with you in resisting somehow. You don't want to act or even talk alone. You don't want to go out of your way to make trouble. Why not? Well, you are not in the habit of doing it, and it's not just fear of standing alone that restrains you. It is also genuine uncertainty. Uncertainty is a very important factor, and instead of decreasing as time goes on, it grows. Outside, in the streets, in the general community, everyone is happy. One hears no protest and certainly sees none. You know, in France or Italy, there would be slogans against the government painting on walls and fences. In Germany, outside the cities, perhaps there was not even this. In the university community, in your own community, you speak privately to your colleagues, some of whom certainly feel as you, but what do they say? They say, it's not bad, you're seeing things, and you're an alarmist. And you are an alarmist. You are saying that this must lead to this, and you can't prove it. These are the beginnings, yes, but how do you know for sure when you don't know the end? And how do you know or even surmise the end? On the other hand, your enemies, the law, the regime, the party, intimidate you. On the other, your colleagues poo-poo you as a pessimist or a neurotic. You are left with your close friends who are naturally people who have always thought as you have. But your friends are fewer now. Some have drifted off somewhere or submerged themselves in their work. You no longer see as many as you did at meetings or gatherings. Informal groups become smaller. Attendance drops off in little organizations, and the organizations themselves wither. Now, in small gatherings of your oldest friends, you feel that you are talking to yourselves, that you are isolated from reality of things. This weakens your confidence still further and serves as further deterrent. To what? It is clear all the time. If you are going to do anything, you must make an occasion to do it, and then you are obviously a troublemaker. So you wait, and you wait. But the one great shocking occasion, when tens or hundreds of thousands will join you, never comes. That's the difficulty. If the last and worst act of the whole regime had come immediately after the first and smallest, thousands, yes, millions, would have been sufficiently shocked. If, let us say, the gassing of the Jews in 1943 had come immediately after the German affirm stickers on the windows of the non-Jewish shops in 1933, but of course this isn't the way it happens. In between come all the hundreds of little steps, some of them imperceptible, even of them preparing you not to be shocked by the next. Step C is not so much worse than step B, and if you did make a stand at step B, why should you at step C, and so on to step D? One day too late your principles, if you were ever sensible of them, all rush in upon you. The burden of self-deception has grown too heavy, and some minor incident, in my case, my little boy, hardly more than a baby, saying Jewish swine, collapses it all at once, and you see that everything has changed, and changed completely under your nose. The world you live in, your nation, your people, is not the world you were born in at all. The forms are all there, all touched, all reassuring, the houses, the shops, the jobs, meal times, the visits, concerts, the cinema, the holidays. But the spirit, which you never noticed, because you'd made the lifelong mistake of identifying it with the forms, is changed. Now you live in a world of hate and fear, and the people who hate and fear do not even know it themselves. When everyone is transformed, no one is transformed. Now you live in a system which rules without responsibility, even to God. The system itself could not even have intended this in the beginning, but in order to sustain itself, it was compelled to go all the way. You have gone almost all the way yourself. Life is a continuing process, a flow, not a succession of acts and even events at all. It was flowed to a new level, carrying you with it without any effort on your part. On this new level you live. You have been living for comfortably every day in new morals and new principles. You have accepted these things that you would not have accepted 5 years ago, a year ago. Things your father, even in Germany, would not have imagined. Suddenly, it all comes down, all at once. You see what you are, what you have done, or more accurately, what you haven't done. For that was all that was required for most of us, that we did do nothing. You remember those early meetings of your department in the university. If one had stood, others would have stood, perhaps. But no one stood. A small matter, a matter of hiring this man or that. You hired this man, one rather than that, and you remember everything now. Your heart breaks. Too late. You are compromised beyond repair. What then? You must then shoot yourself. A few did, or adjust your principles. Many tried, and some, I suppose, succeeded. Not I, however. Or learn to live the rest of your life with your shame. This last is the nearest there is, under the circumstances, to heroism, shame. Many Germans become this poor kind of hero. Many more, I think, than the world knows or cares to know. I said nothing. I thought of nothing to say. I can tell you, my colleague went on, of a man in Leipzig, a judge. He was not a Nazi, except nominally, but he certainly wasn't an anti-Nazi. He was just a judge. In 42 or 1943, early 43, I think it was, a Jew was tried before him in a case involving but only one incidental relations with an Aryan woman. This was a race injury, something the party was especially anxious to punish. In the case at bar, however, the judge had the power to convict the man of a non-racial offense and send him to an ordinary prison for a very long time, thus saving him from the party processing, which would have meant a concentration camp or more probably deportation and death. But the man was innocent of the non-racial charge in the judge's opinion, and so, as an honorable judge, he acquitted him. Of course, the party seized the Jew as soon as he left the courtroom. And the judge? Yes, the judge? He could not get the case off his conscience. A case, mind you, in which he had acquitted an innocent man. He thought that he should have convicted him and saved him from the party. But how could he have convicted an innocent man? The thing preyed on him more and more, and he had to talk about it. First to his family, then to his friends, and then to his acquaintances. That's how I heard about it. After the 1944 putsch, they arrested him. After that, I don't know. I said nothing. Once the war began, my colleague continued, resistance, protest, criticism, complaint, all carried with them a multiplied likelihood of the greatest punishment. Mere lack of enthusiasm or a failure to show it in public was defeatism. You assume that there was a list of those who had been dealt with later after the victory. Goebbels was very clever here, too. He continually promised the victory orgy to take care of those who thought that they were treasonable attitude had escaped notice. And he meant it. That was not just propaganda. And that was enough to put an end to all uncertainty. Once the war began, the government could do anything necessary to win. So it was with the final solution of the Jewish problem, which the Nazis always talked about but never dared undertake, not even the Nazis, until war and its necessities gave them the knowledge that they could get away with anything. The people abroad who thought the war against Hitler would help the Jews were wrong, and the people in Germany who, once the war had begun, still thought of the complaining, protesting, resisting, were betting on Germany's losing the war. It was a long bet. Not many made it. So that was an excerpt, written by Milton Mayer of a book long back away. They thought they were free, and I hope you heard all the things, change and transformation, and all these attitudes that they put on us today that's on the United States psyche, that they are consistent with that time. Now, behind the woodshed, I'm not necessarily supportive of this view of just that the Jews were penalized and punished. No, there was many, many, many peoples more than a religious group of people. In fact, behind the woodshed, you've heard me talk that the so-called Jewish people were actually in the SS, and there was a faction split between the two Jewish ways. Not much different, I guess, in some regard, than Shia and Sunni belief type systems. I don't know. I didn't get too much into it. All I need to know is there's not the history that we've been told. Notwithstanding that, you hope you heard really how consistently I've been talking behind the woodshed to expose this very condition in our society today, that we just don't do anything, and we needed to. That it's too late once we act. I told you, we're in a battlefield. Look how much more lethal and much more devastating the punishment is if you try to stand out now. And it's going down this road. It's going to get worse. That we really can't be quiet. This is telling us the history, the observations of another time that look exactly like today's time. As I read that again, I was just noticing how consistent my message or the principles that I bring, really not knowing that this has already been stated before. Nothing's new under the sun. It's always interesting to have confirming prior voice to an ongoing. Talk about the revolution, the rotation around the same wheel of abuse that we do. Here it is. That's from an excerpt. I don't even know what the more of the book says. I was just fascinated by the fact of how consistent that statement is with us today, and where the answer is. It's in us, isn't it? Again, I didn't make this up. I'm just trying to remind us of a principle we should have never ought to lost, and we're just not executing upon. The whole of international, natural, and even civil law confirm this inaction. It's a sin in large part. You notice he talked about in fear. Fear overtakes. I said, I'm commanded not to fear. I don't know how that actually eventuates itself, because I'm a fear to heights. I got to work through that one. But you work through it, folks. That's the point. It's in us, and we have the power and the authority to not be afraid, as much as we can be confused and influenced to be afraid. And what did he talk about? The uncertainty. What I talk about all the time, try to remove that in every aspect. Bring your bag of law. Bring your facts and your certainty. That's, probably the biggest one I was reading through. I said, wow, this is uncertainty. This really is a problem. We don't act because we are uncertain. I'm asking us to be certain. And apparently that's almost too much to ask for a lot of people. As I look at, again, a dwindling listener base, and I don't understand what it is. No one writes me either, so I don't know. Maybe I don't know. I don't have a clue. I know a lot of you still do, and like I said, I really appreciate that. I can only hope that we're all working along our own paths and making the world a little bit brighter. I guess what I want to bring is what we really have to do is we really have to change that oppression that comes on in the form of government, in the form that allows for dwindling groups of people to then become looking like they're the outcast, and in fact they're the only witness. And they become that way because we don't stay unified in our own individual action because of all the truth that was spoken there. The uncertainty really is a big one. Someone makes a suggestion, and if the 100th monkey says it's okay, even though it's wrong, everybody else decides that that's good enough. And then they turn on those that won't agree. And you have to just understand the dynamic, I guess, for me to tell you. And once you see that, for me, seeing that has been able to allow me to anticipate. You almost know it's going in that direction, where you don't have the outreach, the communication lines, the depth and the breadth of a communication. You kind of know it's going to go against you. When you know that, you can protect against that. So what I end up doing, whether I plan it ahead of time, what ends up happening is when they go to the 100th monkey and try to go against you, you have the ace have already been set up in the record to show them how they were all wrong. Because memories are short. All these things that I learned, not all of them that I can remember, but these things in the protocols of the Elders of Zion, you can use against other people as well. Only I hope, we do this as much as I can follow. We do this to become more peaceful, more tranquil, more secure in the real sense of it. We use people's failures to show them that they can't operate that way anymore. And there's a more objective basis to be living and to be working toward. And so when the 100th monkey happens, you've already set the seed to show how when the 100th monkey happens, they've all agreed to be criminals. And a lot of times for people, it becomes pretty embarrassing. And you dwindle that, they kind of self-explode in a way. You only have the biggest deniers then, and they're easy to defeat because you've already laid the objective basis before them that they decided in their lust and greed and their passion and zealotry to move forward on toward this and into the stinking abyss. They just didn't notice. And then we never take a judgment. That they find that they made a mistake, that's great. That's what you want. You want people, if they're making a mistake, to finally see it and then stop. You'll find the criminal is the one that finds that out and doesn't stop their actions. That's how easily that is. And those people are not very many, actually. It's either the most invested or the most psychopathic, essentially. And there's only a few people like that, actually. So as we see, the title of that, they thought they were free, but then it was too late. Hot on the heels, right in time. Supreme Court rules the cops do not need a warrant to search your home. Where in the Fourth Amendment is that, folks? But here's how they do it. They start splitting us up amongst ourselves. When there's division, they creep in. And this is how I haven't thought about it this morning, how to solve this. It have to be some kind of a notice. However, how they do it is if they got two people on a piece of property and you agree to be residents, a division of agreement between whether a cop can come on or not will be enough to be a question for the cop that gives them the license to not, as Ginsburg said, they don't have to adhere to the warrant requirement. In another devastating blow to freedom, the Supreme Court Tuesday ruled that police don't need a warrant to search your property. As long as two occupants, listen very carefully, as long as two occupants disagree about allowing officers to enter and the resident who refuses access is then arrested, people may enter the residence. So here you see they're going to, and this is not to support so-called domestic abuse. This is how they are causing trouble to find ways to fracture what was not supposed to be infringed. They find a division, and in a domestic dispute, whether or not you have one, if someone even says that they are there and don't know their rights, and even if you're all in agreement that the cops shouldn't come there, and they answer the question wrong, are you a resident? Yes, and you have nothing to hide. Can I come in? And you say no, and the other one doesn't understand to say no, and they say yes. You don't have a Fourth Amendment right there. So this is where we now see, and I'll just use it for this point, that you have to be around people that know what they're doing against the government, because you thought you were free, and then it's too late. Understand how that works now. I mean, how simple I can apply that. But now as we see this encroachment by government. So if you thought there was a Fourth Amendment, they're recognizing something there, but they're finding ways to chip away at it. So if you are around people that don't know their rights and are intimidated by authority and don't understand how to do what we might learn, but all of us might have behind the woodshed listening right now might know how to do this. You are with somebody who misstates something. You could be subject, and then they're making stuff up anyway. You could be subject to the defeat of your ability to defend yourself against what would be otherwise a trespass. How they're going to identify who actually is a so-called resident as opposed to any other status, boy, I don't know. I'm not sure. Again, these cases are created by the attorneys, the bar members, that will only argue the parts they want. Remember, you hear lots of evidence of this. The Rosa Parks story, where that was a fabricated the blacks to the back of the bus. It was a fabricated case in order to make that go away. Now, that has a nice outcome. I mean, there shouldn't be that discrimination. I mean, who cares? I mean, you find a place on a bus and go. It's public transit. But in fact, that's what had to happen. But that was evidence of a fabricated case. Roe versus Wade, same thing. We were told it was one thing. We find out later it's actually the legalization of the abortion industry for body parts, and now we see the human fetal tissue put in vaccines. If you didn't think there's a lot of money behind killing babies and getting the law to say so, Roe versus Wade was a fabricated case in order to get that to happen. So we have this other thing called rights. Again, you think you're free until you're not. Child Protective Services, children found in human trafficking trade. I wanted to let you know, I said it before, this is what a documentary that I had been finding doing my research was going to uncover. It's only taken about 12 more years now. Now it's coming out in the news. I was telling you, when I saw Sandusky coming down and then the connections of Sandusky, I said, watch out, it's going to be jumping into Britain. And then you saw the BBC fiasco, and now you see it's almost in all government. Pedophilia and other things. Was then what I wasn't able to get out into a documentary, and for reasons I will just have to agree with, that it's coming out now. Child Protective Services agencies are intended to take care of children. We talked about that, with nowhere else to go. Oh, what about the families they steal the kids from, the little goats from, to take them? I've been seeing quite a few of those cases, not with nowhere else to go. They got plenty of place to be. They are destroyed by Child Protective Services. But corruption has infiltrated the government custodial system, putting kids at great risk. All I just want to do, you got the link to read this. Anybody's involved with this really needs to get some of this information in your background. This is for real. This is not my opinion. It hasn't been mainstream news. Now it is. So here we are, 15 years later. I can't be happier to watch it and see it. The rights of child, UN imposition, come in through the family courts adopted that as their authority. They have destroyed families. Now they're using that the domestic abuse and the ignorance of people knowing their rights at a house, calling you a resident, calling someone else a resident, having equal say then, without a disclosure that you don't. You have equal say to degrade somebody else's rights on the same property. Understand how they do this, and when you start seeing it, you too can step up and maybe start coming up with answers. I'm asking you because I can't. I got ideas, but I can't. My mind only goes so far. I got only so much time in the day, and I'm focused on other things. As we go on, child care, right? You want to care, the government caring for you. You should be deathly afraid of this stuff as we see how it actually works. I want to remind you of something that came up with John Rappaport again, firing on all cylinders. His reporting has been dead on all this stuff, but he reminds us of an interview he had back in 2009, no different than Carla Lucci brings up about this Israeli-United States plan to take out Persia. Now, it comes up in the same week. John Rappaport reminds us of his Dr. Starfield, Dr. Barbara Starfield interview. I want to let you know about that. A bit, not to read it through, you can find it. It's Starfield Revelation, Medical Caused Death in America. In other words, when you go through and you read, you realize the medical industry is a death dealer. And she did the reports, and essentially, everybody who does this pays a bit of the price. Her report was actually printed, I think it was in JAMA, and you'll get the link to that. Oh, in 2000. How long ago this proof is. That the legal, remember I told you folks, your license is a permission to do an illegal act. And they can give, in that license, they can legalize unlawful activity, like killing people. Remember, it's post-market analysis for industry. That's what the vaccines are based on. That's how we saw that with the WHO, not the rock group or the owl, no, the WHO, the World Health Organization. That they give themselves a number, that's a risk assessment of what they're who they allow, many they allow to kill within the license. In other words, the Clean Water Act, as I've said it before, it's not an act to keep water clean. It's an act to pollute it so much. And what's the heinousness about that is that the agency comes in and says that miners are polluting water, when in fact miners don't pollute water at all. It's Mother Nature they're moving around, and it's not pollution what miners do, but they're the ones that get the brunt of it, while other industry gets to spray persistent contrails in the air, which we heard last year NASA now acknowledges is actually changing your weather. For, if you want to call it human-caused weather modification, there it is. So I wanted to remind you here, we're reminded again, 2000, folks, a doctor comes out and says, your medical profession isn't what you think it is. It's actually a killer, literally a killer. Right after, also in the same week, Richard Moskowitz, we get another link from Health Impact News. He's another doctor, wants to tell us the fact and bring a case against immunizations. If you need more facts about this, he'll bring some more for you. I guess I could read a little bit here, but why? I mean, you need to see this for yourself. I could read all day, and you're just going to either not listen to it or you'll take interest in it, and I want you to actually see the black and white. Let me just go through the list. He goes through and explains whether or not in his learned doctoral experience that whether or not vaccines are effective. You've heard a lot of this before. More facts that he'll bring along that you need to put in your mind. He's got it completely, it's all been supported by other evidences that he has in resources in the bottom. Some personal experience of vaccine cases from him out of the doctor's mouth. You get to hear from his own experience, which I think is always important. How the vaccine works, he'll explain for you that if you wanted a short synopsis. From another doctor, not necessarily a CDC, and he'll go through and explain to you how that may not be such a good thing for you. And I say that because where you thought you were free, you will be. The legislation is now on the books in order to make it mandatory for you to have a vaccine, whether you want it or not. And you're going to have this knowledge in your mouth, in your brain, and then in your mouth, and then on paper, actually, ultimately. And you can't delay response. You have to respond immediately. Again, ongoing. Weston A. Price Foundation. Weston A. Price was a dentist. You need to really research on any information he has. He's really kind of brought open a whole lot of nice information for people. And really, bottom line, you want to keep healthy? Just keep your nutrition up. Eat well. Don't be persuaded away against nutrition. I think being a dentist, he actually started indigenous people, if I can call them that. I don't even know what else to call them. Just peoples that have been here for a long time that have not been interfered with by processed foods and processed society, so-called civilized society. He found out, he did studies of people, and they tend to have a lot of good teeth. We would tend to think otherwise, but their teeth in the populations that he checked that had good natural. We would think that they were kind of heathens, but their lifestyle was worked out on the land for what the land had to offer, and they didn't outdo the land, and they were eating surviving in harmony, if I can use that word now, with the land, and their nutrition was up. He found that those peoples had fabulous teeth. We need to take cognizance, but Weston A. Price Foundation is a website you can go to. Public health officials know recently vaccinated individuals spread disease. They were citing a global news. I've already been on the record for this as the study that we showed. They're actually pointing this out as well. If you want it from different places, the same statements coming out. And again, I don't really want to read it. There's information here to stop mandatory vaccinations, to keep the choice about that in you, and to actually fight against these lunatics, these purveyors of doom upon the world. In other words, the WHO, literally, as pigs fly flu. That organization, they're back in the news right now. These people, actually brokers for pharma and biopharma, they're in the news again. Developing world. The WHO's, not the rock groups or not the owls, but the World Health Organization, the WHO's private vaccine laboratory. And now you understand when they're having their own laboratory and they're making their own definitions, how they can constrain the conversation and frame, more importantly, the conversation to be compliant with what they need to see as an outcome. Well, I've been telling you, be careful when you see the word pandemic. It's an invented term. These people here did that. It is and they have apparently now been found to have secret labs. It is a recognized fact. I wouldn't be surprised if Bill Gates is involved in helping this, or Warren Buffett, or any of those guys. It's a recognized fact. The developing world has been used by the World Health Organization as a vaccine laboratory for decades. A recognized fact, folks. What we talked about way back in 2009 or so, when I started broadcasting this stuff. When I identified the pig's fly flu as a government flu before that proof came out, months and months before, because of the words they were using to describe it. When I said novel, remember I brought up the concept of something being novel? I said that's a patented organism. We now know them as GMOs in a quick term. This is a laboratory vaccine laboratory of the world. I identified that years ago. So this is now a recognized fact. With this in mind, we must ask ourselves, is it right to use vulnerable children in vaccination experiments? Well, their children are state wards. They're just the property of the state, folks. Do we even have a say over that? That's our problem. We haven't stopped that problem. Of course it's not. The question's kind of an absurd question. That we even have to ask, it's an absurd condition. We thought we were free. Apparently not. Well, these people can come in and do this kind of stuff and test you. You're not free. And we need to stop that part. They're looked at as an expert, and they're in it on a commercial level, folks. This is what the license is, a commercial permission to violate law. I hope you're really tying this stuff together. This is what one of the main arguments, it's not an argument, the main facts of the distinction and chasm, the uncrossable chasm that we have now identified with land property owners, land uses that are actually the productive uses, and commerce. It's why if you look around, you'll see constitutions with agricultural and haul roads in their constitution to be protected as a public benefit. Those are not commerce highways to be regulated. They're already regulated to the free use in those beneficial uses of their for their utility. Why? To tie the property that did all that to the people that need it, the society. So we have very foundational things that transcend, if you will. They're antecedent to all this commercialization. So when you see the government speaking, its authority is through commerce. So that when we get these things called that the feds, America should adopt a plant-based diet as a promotion, that's in commerce. Remember, we all is underpinned in commerce under Title 50. That's the military rule. And we also have the UN imposition soft law that says that the UN wants you to eat grass, apparently, like a cow. They don't want you to eat the cow. They don't want the cow in the forest, but they want you to eat the green grass, apparently, the foliage, be a deer or something. And that's supposed to be doing good for you. But here is where they're they're planting the seeds for you to be have a plant-based diet. The federal committee responsible for nutrition guidelines is calling for adoption of a plant-based diet, taxes on dessert, trained obesity, interventionists at work sites, and electronic monitoring on how long Americans sit in front of their television. Again, you thought you were free, folks. This is what I guess the theme today is. No, folks, you're not. And you're not engaging with these agencies to shut them down and the limit of their authority. You notice they go through work sites. That's an employer. And that has a labor statute, and that's under Title 29, labor. For United States labor, they all deal, everybody's a laborer, a United States laborer. So if you start understanding how this works, you have a better thing to say. You have a better place to begin. See, for us as a producer, we have livelihoods. We don't have employment. And if you start understanding these distinctions, you'll start understanding what's in my mind that I probably never ever say a lot, of the foundational and fundamentals of how you can show yourself to be a distinct and different and outlaw, if you will. They're out legal. They can't legalize you. If you learn how to represent yourself in the ways that is distinct and different and out legal from the legal system, the law, the so-called the authority. They want you to eat like a cow. That's what the feds want. I don't know if you watched Michelle Obama's Food, but I mean the kids are just they're not no authority to stop it, but they're not having this nonsense that you see on that's offered for students to eat. But you know all this plant-based, you know it's going to be GMOs. So this is again the bottom line. I'm reminded of Corporation Nation, Clint Richardson, and his showing you of how the bottom line is the bottom line, and you better be able to figure out how to talk outside of that. We're talking more about maybe out of place here. Back to another. You want another proof? I found something. Attorney demolishes pro-vaccine talking points, lays bare the shocking facts about vaccination risks and dangers. I won't want to read. I just want to point out there's information everywhere to go against what they're coming at you with right now. It's all coming in the same time. It's there for you to pluck out and use for yourself. Quit being the victim. Stop thinking you're free and start conducting yourself so that you are. Now, how do you do that? You denounce and destroy any apparent authority coming against you. Because, here it comes, folks, you think you're free. Texas rushes a medical tyranny. 9 bills of vaccine coercion proposed. Those few folks in Texas, you think something's too big for Texas? Don't mess with Texas? Well, they're messing with you. What you going to do about it? What are you going to do, tough boy and girl? What are you going to do about this? You better know what to do about this. You think you're free. You think you're big and bad. You think you're an independent state. You think the Constitution don't matter to you. You got your own. You better look very carefully at what's going on here, folks. I'm not picking on Texas, but they're pretty big. And they're just as vulnerable. To me, we're all vulnerable. To all y'all that have a belief in nationality down to the state, you don't think you're so vulnerable. The state legislature is going to take you folks out. We see that in lots of states now. And now almost the raps are off about how they do that. And in fact, you look at them as an authority, you look at the experts, you look at again, they're being influenced by these stakeholders. All these people with an interest in it that come to take you out. As I said in a paper, stakeholders will interfere. You and your property and what you do is not a stakeholder, but those stakeholders, the one that have an interest to parasitically feed off of you, will talk against you to be able to do that to you. And the government goes with it because that's the only voice they have. But in fact, when you listen closely enough, as we've talked about, the science doesn't know anything. It's scientology. It's what we think we know. A CERN physicist admits, Goswami, we have no idea what we're doing. And an admission from 1970, hearkening back to study Earth's climate can be modified using emissions from jet aircraft. If you don't think that the jig is up for us if we remain silent. I've got proof here for you to pick up if you want. The Blogcaster page has all this stuff. I won't read the stories. We're running out of time here. Bottom line is, the information is there to empower us to stop the nonsense. It's up to us. We thought we were free until it was too late. Folks, let's not have that happen to us. It's getting very scarily close, I guess, at some level. But thank you for tuning in today. Donate where you can. Again, Grimner put out of his pocket last week for the servers on RLM. If you can help donate to him, even I think he's got a PayPal as well. I talk about the Doge of War. Being that we're in the battlefield America now, we have the Doge of War. He takes a Dogecoin, but he'll take other stuff. And then WT, join up and involve yourself with them, and UCY.TV and all broadcasters that are terrestrial broadcasts. I do appreciate all that, what you all do, folks. It's time. It really is for us to do. I'm having little more time for people that are just making excuses either. There is something for everybody to do somewhere, even if you're just helping. So let's do that. Again, and I apologize at some level. I would like to get in and do the chat rooms, but I just can't. I'm lined in, but I just can't focus on that while I'm doing my bringing the information. It's just not a capacity that I have. That I do apologize. I do wish I could do better. I do. Listen, folks, you get into the chat rooms. A lot of people have more insights than what I'll talk about, and I get focused on a train of thought. There's more to say. I just can't get it said, and it is said in there. So, again, thank you very much. To tune into the regular broadcast if you can. I understand that JJ was on right before me as a replay. The VJJ replays, I understand Vincent called it. Thank you for setting that up so that we can have a nice power-packed week. weekend over at UCY. I do appreciate all that and all the help that you guys do and everything that y'all do, even if I don't hear about it. markmanthebeast.yahoo.com may resolve that for me. Thank you very much. Take care.
Well, that's another lesson. I hope with today's information you can take it to those that misbehave. From behind the woodshed, leaving his mark on the beast, this is Hal Anthony. Till next time, journey with purpose.
So that's what opening up a can of whoop-ass feels like.
Son, you just opened a whole case of whoop-ass.